Okay, so we're going to start. Thanks for joining me during lunch. That's very nice of you. This is a sponsored talk. It's going to be about Clever Cloud and Software Factory. You can replace Clever Cloud by a Heroku or any other platform as a service provider if you think it's too sponsory. My name is Laurent Doguin. I work for Developer Relations at Clever Cloud. I used to work for Nuxio and Couchbase. You can find me on GitHub, Twitter, LinkedIn, blah, blah, any social network. I also brew and sell craft beer in France professionally. That's another thing about me. And the hashtag of the conference is emoji lightbulb and emoji cloud for Clever Cloud. Anyway, what's a software factory? We don't have time, so you don't have to read this. That's what a software factory is for. Basically, the goal when you deploy a software factory is to go faster with your development. In a company, the value comes mostly from the business, so mostly from the code. The rest, which is making sure that your code works and is deployed in production, is infrastructure. Infrastructure is a cost, and you want to make sure that this is not slowing down your developers. So software factory basically iterate faster, put new release of your software faster, make your boss happy, blah, 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 blah. Something very important about this talk is that I'm mostly going to talk about how to set up the software factory, but what's really important to remember is that even if you have the best tool in the world, all about culture first. Make sure that your developers, your workforce know the value of having a software factory, know how it is, know what it's for, and actually use it instead of just giving them, software to deploy. So that was all the slides I had. Demo time. As I just told you, I work for Clever Cloud. Clever Cloud is a platform as a service on which you can deploy various things. I hope it's big enough. Should be big enough. Among those various things, usually people just deploy their application. Just like Heroku, git push your code, choose an application is basically a runtime and a build tool. So let's say JVM and Maven, JVM and Gradle, JVM and a jar or WAR, or Node.js or whatever languages you want to use, Rust, Elixir, Erlang, PHP, blah, blah, blah. We give you a remote branch, a remote Git branch, push your code to that remote. You're in production, everything's wonderful, life is wonderful, production is wonderful, and all that stuff. So I'm going to show you how to deploy a software factory on Clever Cloud because git push and it works is sort of a continuous deployment pipeline, which is what we do, which is fine. And you can create a staging environment, a development environment. It's all up to you, but it's only git push, your source code, and it works not very smart or complicated. Sometimes you want to do other stuff and get a proper software factory, which is what we're going to see today. And to that end, I'm going to deploy the CI/CD pipeline first, or the automation tool first, and that's Jenkins. I'm not going to push the Jenkins code, although I could, but I'm going to show you that we have pre-integrated add-on. So that's my Jenkins. And what it's going to do is deploy Jenkins, install the latest version, install the latest, some common plugins like Blue Ocean and all that stuff. So right now, it's working. It's not ready yet. It's being installed. We use VM, 6 or 7 seconds to start a VM, and then we start installing everything. So until this thing is ready, I'm going to move out to something else, which is Artifactory. My goal in this example will be to execute a Jenkins pipeline that takes an OpenAPI JSON definition, so it's like an API documentation, and based on that documentation, you can generate several things. I can generate a Java client, and I can generate the HTML documentation. At the end of the pipeline, once the Java client is generated, it's a jar. I need to put that somewhere, like in a binary repository, which is part of traditional software factory, and for that I'm using Artifactory. So that's what I'm going to deploy here. Let's see. Not much in that repository. It's a Git repository. There's a WAR. There's a Clever Cloud configure shell, and then there's something called war.json. This is all the configuration you need to do to make sure that this is going to get deployed properly on Clever Cloud. The JSON file basically tell you put that war and put that on Tomcat 8. Could be anything else. And the config file make sure that you initialize Artifactory's configuration with the proper parameters like the Postgres database I'm going to use and all that things. So how does it work? We have an API. The console I just showed you before is a single web page app based on that API. There's a command line tool based on that API. So what I'm going to do is follow that README that was used for Cloud Conference 2018, and I should have changed before doing that talk. But anyway, what I'm doing is creating a Java application called Artifactory Cloud Conf 2018. So it's using the API. It's been created. If I go back to my console, we should see something there. Well, actually, you should see something if I tell him to create that at the right place. So I need to tell him, please deploy that on my organization. Because when you start something, you have a user, which is where I just created that. I want to create this on my user account. I want to share that factory with everybody, so I have an organization where I can invite other user. And so I just basically told it to deploy on that organization, so it should show up in a minute. There we go. This is a Java app. If you go into information, you can see, well, you cannot see, but that's a remote Git branch. I could use that directly, or I could just push the code, which is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep on using the command line tool. Because Artifactory is storing stuff, I need somewhere to store stuff. And we have something called file system buckets. Basically, it's NFS, just like you would have a volume with Amazon, it's just like a shared volume. Why do we do that? Every application that you use on Clever Cloud is managed as immutable, which means that when you push a new version, everything is going to be spawned up in a new VM. The reverse proxy will see this VM is up, it's ready to take connection. The reverse proxy will move the new connection to the new VM and then kill the old one. So everything you've written on the old one will be lost. So you need a proper place to store things, which is what I just did. I created a file system bucket. Now I'm going to create a Postgres database as well. So let's do that. Postgres database in the proper organization as well. Because of course Artifactory needs to. Too bad. That's very sad. Copy pasting is wrong. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. Artifactory needs to store stuff somewhere, so I'm creating a PostgreSQL database. I'm going to link that database and that file system bucket to my current application. And of course, okay, so because I screwed up in the beginning, I'm going to move on to the actual console because it's easier, because now we have two applications that have the same name and blah, blah, blah. So let's do that here. Here's the file system. Here's the database. Now I've linked two things to another thing. What that means is each time I start that thing, I have environment variables that are injected automatically, just like you would have with a Docker Compose file or anything, which allow me to connect to, for instance, that database. See, I have a database. There's some environment variable, so if I go to my code, and if I go into environment variable, I can see that there's already a bunch of variables that let me connect to that thing. And then there's a bunch of things I need to do. I need to set up 3 environment variable. Actually, yeah, 3 of those to make sure that Artifactory can be configured. So if I go under environment variable, expert mode, because I'm an expert, of course I know what I'm doing. Artifactory home will be under /app/artifactory. I have a pre-run hook that basically tells Clever Cloud to install, to execute the shell script that I showed you earlier. And I have an FS bucket, which is, this is where you should write your stuff. I need to get the proper address, because right now it's blah, blah, blah. So if I go to my wonderful information tab, I get the proper address. I can just copy paste it. I have 5 minutes left. That's maybe gonna make it, maybe not. right under Artifactory, get rid of the old one, save. Now everything is configured. It's a Git repository, so when I run clever deploy, what's going to happen is that it's going to deploy my code on Clever Cloud. Of course, I have that alias issue that I've been having since the beginning, so what I'm going to do instead is probably just get the remote branch and then just do a git push clever master, clever being the name of my branch and master being my actual branch. So what I'm just doing is pushing the var. Things should be starting soon. I'm going to go back to my Jenkins instance and see if it's running. It's running. I'm not logged in, so to log in, there's a link. Open and log in. Yay! There you go. You have a Jenkins instance. It's already running. There's already a bunch of plugins installed, like Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean is the new UI that Jenkins uses, and there's a bunch of wizards and stuff that allow you to create a pipeline. I'm going to use something on GitHub. I need to set up my GitHub access, so I need to sign into GitHub. And of course, I have two-factor authentication, which everybody should have, because of course it's a good thing to do, but of course it's slowing you down during your demos. And it's going to give me a token. That token will allow Jenkins to connect automatically to Jenkins, to GitHub, sorry. Well, so now I get to choose my user, I get to choose a repository I want to use. You can see there's a notification on the right that said that the deployment has started. That's my Artifactory being started. It's called Clever Swagger. There you go. Create a pipeline. Now he's going to create a pipeline. He's going to execute that pipeline. And he's going to fail miserably because my Artifactory is not configured yet, which is fine. So obviously we need to configure it as well. You can see here that it's deploying, so I can take a look at the logs, which are available here. You can see that it's working. I have 3 minutes left. You won't see the end of that demo. I'm going to deploy something else just for fun. I'm going to show you another way to deploy maybe Rocket Chat, because people use chatbots. So a different way of deploying things. This is a JavaScript application. You need to, again, create the application. Interesting. Okay, that's a new one. Create that application. Create that MongoDB add-on. Always the same thing, basically. You link stateful stuff to something that's going to be managed statelessly. Link that add-on. Add a bunch of configuration. So of course I haven't created in the organization, so I need to look it up somewhere else. I'm going to show you the one that's already running. You can see that there's already a bunch of environment variable, and that basically when you go there, you have your Rocket Chat running. Now, the goal of that talk, under 15 minutes and I have 1 minute left, was to show you that it's easy to deploy several components on Clever Cloud or on any platform as a service, and that you don't need much when you have 150 minutes. So Jenkins to do all your CI/CD stuff, Artifactory to store all the things. It should be, it's up, interesting. So I can show you that Artifactory is actually, should be running. There you go, I have my Artifactory once it's loaded. So in another 15 minutes, I set up a binary repository, I've set up a chatbot, I've set up Jenkins CI. If you give me 15 minutes more, I can set up Keycloak, do OpenID authentication with everything. Keycloak can be deployed differently, like I have a Docker image to deploy this, because on Clever Cloud you can deploy Docker image as well. If you liked what you saw, and if you want to do that, or reproduce that at one point, come and join us to our booth, look at all the blogs I've written about how to set this up, It's pretty easy. Thank you for listening. Sorry for the end of the demo. 15 minutes. Cheers.